keep making. But I am, things have started going on these sculptural objects, and it's exciting to see. So I guess I wanted to start there just by saying thanks. We've all been talking individually, and I've been talking to Kelly, throughout the past couple days. But I guess one reason to all meet was also to encourage everybody who hasn't gotten here yet to come add things to the sculptural pedestals or shelf areas, so that at the opening people can see, and as ambassadors it'll be easier to show people who you're working with what should happen. My general thinking is nothing should go on the walls until the benches are just bombarded, or these curio cabinet shelves, benches, pedestals are like, equally as dense as the wall. I think, if not, they're kind of these unfinished objects that are just floating in space. You can override me, but that's my thinking. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, there are a few other things we thought about, which was that, as far as in your first instance, as you shepherd people in, to direct them to first bring things of objects that were representative of some idea of identity or something they're related to. Like Steve, you brought in those pieces of metal that were left over from where you work, right? Which is perfectly representative of self and what you do in Columbus, etc. And then the second is that once you bring them in, is to direct them to the formworks, to think about their position and to intercede in a way that would allow them to experiment with where they place their objects. Because instead of looking at it as merely any shelf will do, this is the opportunity to actually show that by putting it one place versus another, you might set it into resonance with something else. And this engages the visual idea of this stuff, that there's a dialogue that can happen that actually supersedes the narrative you walk in with. Most people walk in with their rosebuds, their narrative. They want to see their narrative clear, so that you want nothing around it, like this. And actually to encourage narratives to be in conversation with each other, like we are as humans, is the analogy to make. And that's the conversation that begins. That's the way to think that's different. What is it that so beautifully said? Art is the gateway drug to learning to think differently. There was Sharon expressed that. And so don't have people fasten their objects right way. Have them try this or try that, and then try to encourage, even amongst ourselves, does something work or not work? Does it just look really okay, or does it actually kind of sings a little bit more? Like it took a while to figure out where that bamboo belonged. But when you cut it into, you made a fern shape with it, and then somehow, by grouping it and talking to Mark, he stuck it over there like a bunch of asparagus kind of supermarket. And it worked with the backdrop so well. It's kind of wonderful. Like, it gives scale to an otherwise small sculptural setting compared to this guy. And so that's the experimenting, not being worried about just merely come in and put something down and your memento's finished. It should be more engaging than this. And then the other thing I thought about was that in the attachment of an object to the wooden forms, that some people, Molly Gabber made a great point. She said, should there be a ready equipment, liquid and mechanical fasteners available so people can actually install this stuff? And in chewing on that, you realize you don't want them to come in and try to say, I got to fasten this right away. You want them to experiment and spend a little bit of time thinking about where this goes. The fastening might happen maybe once a week. One or two of us who are masters for fastening come in and look at what's loose and attaches them. Now that would work for shelves, but it won't work for like what Molly did. You couldn't do unless you did it on site. You can't say, I want these here and I'll wait for someone. Here's instructions. This is what I want, someone do it. So some things will require being attached in situ, and some can be attached by ambassadors who come in with a charge to fasten that which is not.
So what what again is the point of not fastening it at the time?
Experimentation.
Well, they will have experimented and figured, okay, I want this there. Because it's not going to be, we're not going to be messing with it once they're
If
gone.
they spend all their available time screwing around where they want to go.
I see.
I'll let them.
Okay.
And don't worry, we'll fasten it for you.
Okay.
Otherwise.
So
you-
that's more of a thing, don't worry, we'll fasten it for you, not like
Right.
you can't fasten it because at the end of the week we have the fastening day.
Right.
Okay.
And some things will need to be fastened, like that's his point was.
Right.
You know, those
Yeah.
crayons won't stay there unless they're stuck there.
Mhm.
You know, but it doesn't mean, which I've already said to her, there can't be a conversation. That'll be a lot more interesting if you quadruple the amount of crayons in that space. Maybe that's not the right solution, but try it a little bit and see. And we sort of said that with the tree, you know, well, who knows, until we get it up, and then it looks great, you know, and all of a
If David
sudden.
dragged his tree, like, what do you think? And we're like, won't fit on the forms.
But, you know, all of a sudden, the tree is speaking to the bamboo, and the
Mhm.
they're both speaking to the drawings on the wall, and then, you know, all kinds of relationships start happening. But I think that almost nothing should happen without some conversation with, you know, other ambassadors or whatever, just to also build community. But, you know, and then, like, awesome things start happening. I mean, all those bicycle parts went on that, you know, sculptural pedestal, and all of a sudden, the little red thing, which was just sitting by itself,
Mhm.
became really interesting. You know, so there needs, you know, completely transformed. And I think that's what happens, you know, you think of a traditional painting, you know, and it's got all these colors and images or whatever it has, all of a sudden you put a brown circle, everything changes in relationship to the brown circle. So this is like an ongoing, ever-changing, moving, you know, sort of target. And but the best you can do is, you know, think of at the moment in relationship to whatever else is here, you know, and there are choices, you know. He thought about it, brought a different piece in, which, you know, I think is interesting and kind of fits, you know, and so there's lots of choices, and I think, you know, that you know, going backwards, the instinct to stay focused on the wood components on the floor and on the wall, and not touch the walls for a while, I think is the next order of business in terms of building a threshold of things to relate to each other. And I think too much on the wall would just send it into chaos, you know, and so there's plenty of chaos. So what's interesting is order within the chaos, which is kind of what that original
Yeah,
grid
this big grid of
does.
stuff is actually a powerful enough grid to permit all the craziness to be.
Yeah, that's a great anchor, that's a really good idea. Awesome.
The other thing I thought of was that when you look at Mark's earlier shows, this one, which are mostly his hand, a few of them, not like this, that why his installations hung together was my observation that it was what I would call a transformation on a type, that the sculptural forms are like his clay vessels, that they have the same globular organic shape, but the clay vessels are volumes. They have holes in them, right? And yet these aren't. These holes are sideways, not from the top. There's only one in the vessels he makes. They're clay. These are many pocketed, but it's the same form, but it's been reinvented. And so you find that on the rice paper or in the photographs. There's the same body of common languages, or common language, but it's never the same thing repeated. So each time you see it, whether it's the photograph on the rice paper or the wood forms or what goes on them, it's the same similar. There's something similar, but it's completely different each time. And that's kind of how they sort of describe a sort of worldview that way, that a kind of body of many, many differences with some common root, like this. And when you bring folks in to put stuff to it, they're entering that dialogue with it in some way. So that's something else to keep in mind. At least understand how quickly work formally makes itself an order, how it makes it order. Which is a way of suggesting one could bring in stuff that doesn't work.
Yes, you could. I mean, you have to edit, but also,
You have
I
to
think,
edit?
no,
Did you
not
say?
that you have to personally edit.
Oh.
Not,
Right.
you have to decide, does this, like he chose one pot versus another.
Mhm.
Nobody edited that for him, that was his choice.
Right.
But, I mean, I don't think it's likely, but I can imagine, you know, Lisa said she'd sent information out to the Indianapolis Museum, the Cincinnati Museum, the Louisville Museum. It's not out of the question some museum curator could say, let's move this whole thing to Cincinnati. So, you know, I mean, I think it's, you know, it's like serious play. You know, I had a friend who ran a thing in New York called Serious Play. It was mostly a music thing, performance thing, but, or Serious Fun, I think was the name. But, you know, it's like to sort of have your own identity, you know, but have it be sort of thoughtful, like where things go, which of course it is anyway, but, you know.
Well, that sort of leads to the question about, you know, people bringing in things that, you know, may or may not work, or, I mean, I guess where's the line for how much do we curate what other people do? Do we? Or do we just?
I think.
I mean, we can make gentle suggestions.
That's an excellent
whatever.
question. And I think, you know, you each individually have to do judgment calls. You know, what that is. And so, for example, I did a huge collaborative project in Washington, D.C. And the metro system donated 1,200 advertising spaces. It's the first time they'd ever had art in their subway system. We made 1,200 original objects for their subways. The backlit dioramas with the light shines through, the entire side of buses, back of buses. We did 10 billboards. We did sculptures for the Corcoran and the Children's Museum. And their one request was that this one head of it could sort of, not edit, but he could have first right of refusal if something were to go on a bus or this public space. And I'm like, okay, fine, you know, and he was worried about whatever. And the first group of kids I worked with were 100 kids that had been kicked out of every school in the district. And they were pretty tough. And this one girl, and my goal is to like just paint the background blue and put polka dots, just get everybody to do something and work together. She refused and refused, and finally she got up and she paints "For Q Be Loved" over this whole thing. And I'm like, great, she rose to the occasion, it's all awesome. You know, he goes, we can't use that. I'm like, well, why? He goes, it's the 4th and Q Street gang. You know, we can't. I mean, I would have no way of knowing. You know, and like, you don't want to, you know, advertise like whatever. And so, is it possible somebody would have something that's so offensive, not just aesthetically not pleasing? I think we just have to trust that everybody has good intentions, and you know, if something comes up, deal with it, and you know, and assume it won't. So I also think there are any bad components to be added. It's just where they're added. Do you know what I mean? Like some things, you know, if they would dominate so much, then nothing else could exist. So I think it's more sort of things in relationship to each other that matters, you know, other than thinking, oh, you can't possibly use that. You know, but somebody could say, well, we should move that face, you know, and you get in the conversation. Well, maybe that face would be better down low where it's discovered instead of in your face. I mean, for example, I mean, I'm not picking on it, I'm just, somebody asked me, Molly asked, whose it was that, or whatever. So, you know, there's no reason not to have that conversation, as opposed to, and I keep saying this over and over again, if this was me alone or all of us, there is no way this many things could go in this big a space and every piece of paper that got put up was exactly where it belonged. You have to go back in and add and edit and take away. That is the creative process, at least in the fine art world. You know, and I won't speak to music and poetry and other things, although I suspect it's the same. But you know, it's just part of the deal, is you struggle with it, you know, and you struggle to sort of make magic, and then it happened. And at a certain point, you don't even know how it happened. But I think that the part of the magic is all these different voices coming together to talk to each other. And part of the hope is these wooden forms are formally strong enough to kind of embrace all those things.
Well, in terms of some basic rules, you and I talked about this the other day. Could a person move an object that had been set there by another person? Not us, but there's a little white clay thing over there. What if someone wants to move it over and put a thing next to it, or move it around to the other side because they've got, you know, or cover it with a scarf? you know, I don't know, I can't even, I'm sure things
That's
will
fine.
come up that
Cover
we
with a
can't even
scarf,
think
move
of,
it, yeah.
or whatever, and we probably have to decide this as we go. We can't have every eventuality planned for, of course.
No, but I mean, all right, so what do you as the ambassadors think about that?
Mhm.
I mean, I don't think that it's not up to me to make that decision. I think that's
Mhm.
your community, you're the ambassadors, you're working with people. What's your opinion? I mean,
I would
my
say no.
instinct is.
I would say no.
I would encourage the person to think about what was there, think about how they could come in contact.
Talk to the person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, to have it work with what is in place, rather than
Mhm.
blast in thinking, oh, no, that's just, you know, I like the energy of that, of coming in and going, where does this really fit? Rather than, where can I slam a place open to make it fit?
Well, not even so extreme, but like covering up somebody's object or moving it in such a way that they liked it better, you know. The respect for what has already been done, already been, you know,
I think
placed or.
that impulse feeds into concerns that the hope is that the people that the ambassadors bring in realize that they're engaging with the work of a master. Right now, you all had a big hand in this particular incarnation of it, but Mark has been making this type of work and thinking deeply about it for years and years and years. And it didn't just happen, you know, easily and lightly. As you know, anybody in their August years of making work, they really think heavily about every move and every screw and every, you know, every little curve.
During your August year.
All that stuff.
I heard that.
That means esteemable and prestigious.
Exactly.
Not all of them, right.
Not all.
No, and so it's a chance to get them not to think, oh, you know, I can just, you know, bring my thing,
Do
my
whatever.
thing. It's like, I have an opportunity to have an interaction with something that's really deep. And that's the kind of message to sort of get across to them, so that they're not saying like, oh, where's the opportunity for me, but like first really engaging and seeing it with their eyes and their physical self to experience the piece, and then, you know, move into it, add to it, and think about it. I think that is why when somebody puts something someplace, the sort of respect and sort of consideration of their effort, thought should be kind of evident at some point.
And I think there's some layering, for lack of knowing what else to call it, that is a natural part of this. So, for example, you put the map on that. Now, it would seem to me somebody's going to put an object on there.
Absolutely.
And that
Yeah.
would be appropriate.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I think some of it, you know, people, you're painting right on the wood.
Right.
So in a way, you're imposing that wood pattern. There's a pattern in mind, but what, you know what I mean? And so it's, part of it is what's supposed to happen, you know, and then the other part of it is, you know, like, you know, if we came in and took the tree down and, you know, put it in the corner without talking to him, you know, that probably would be disrespectful after all the effort to get it here and whatever. So I mean, I think it's a situation by situation, you know, and some, you know, when, you know, everybody's like, you know, pinning rice paper on the wall, then it's going to change and change and change. You know, it's like who's last there or whatever. Different than, you know, moving somebody's thing. You know, I feel like now the framework's established. You know, it took to this point to get enough that there's a world for this to exist in. So now is when it gets kind of interesting, I think. You know, this is like a backdrop, you know, in conversation. But now the things that get added, you know, how they fit in relationship to each other, I think is what will make it really, really exciting, you know, and yeah.
And the other thing is that particular white object that was the focus of the discussion is pretty well being done.
Oh, okay, that's good to know, yeah.
This plastic.
Also, I heard you guys talking that maybe, Kelly, did you say people should only come once?
No, and Molly had expressed the opinion about, and it's good to ask you guys what you think, she said, apropos of the whether fasteners and equipped tools will be present during the time, because people, she felt, would not want to come back. They would come once.
Oh, I see.
And I thought that was an odd thing. One would encourage folks to come more than once, but it might be that people have time.
I have a feeling that people won't completely get it till they spend some time in here.
Well,
And then they'll go, oh, I have that
Yeah.
thing at home
Many of
and I
you
want
said the same thing.
that
Yeah, come take a
cool
look
ribbon
first.
and I'm going to put that and wrap that around that thing. Or, you know, I have a feeling that's what,
It takes, the one thing that as ambassadors we should strongly encourage is them to block out hours. I mean, it takes a couple hours just to go around and let yourself become immersed in what's up and, you know, what Mark has installed, to get that feeling, to understand what it is that's going on in relation to the sculptures, with the walls, and then once you've kind of got that, you can start to play. And I mean, it's that too, like you're saying, it takes time to, I want to try this. Okay, well then maybe manipulate it or move it here. It's going to take anywhere from 2 to 4 hours for some groups. It's to bring a group in here only for an hour, I think is not giving them a good opportunity to contribute.
how long do you think we should plan to bring people?
Well, it would make sense to say, come see it. Come see it. Before you choose things, come take a look. And that's, you know, what is that? That's 35, 40 minutes looking, walking around, looking at everything. And you talking about what we talk about, what we put together, what Cooper does, etc. And then you play it by ear. You see whether, you know, guys, it's going to take, it took me more than an hour to figure out how to put my own stuff in here. So you should plan it likewise.
I mean, I sort of went into this thinking this is going to be a remarkable thing. You know, I go into most of what I do, you know, thinking that. But, you know, just to show the foot, you know, shoes on the other foot, I got asked, I mentioned it, by somebody to be in this project where I respond to some music and a video and make a sort of installation, but so do like 100 other people. I mean, there's a lot of people involved. You know, but the woman said, you know, the New York Times is picking this up, it's traveling around the world, and, you know, so my choice is, you know, how can I cut my losses and like just give them something to be done, or do I give it a really good shot and trust that somewhere it's going to go somewhere? And my instinct is I'm going to give it a really good shot, as I think, you know, the music, that what I got was awesome, and I think the other things will be, and so that it's, you know, not just like this is fun, it's like we're doing something together that is going to be remarkable, and the people who experience it are going to all think differently about life forever after. You know, not just bringing Columbus together as a community, which is like great, or getting into groups who haven't worked, but actually, you know, opening a way of thinking, you know, from the experience that maybe they wouldn't have had. I think that's a goal, you know. You give it your best shot, whether it happens or not. You know, you can't control it, but so I mean, you know, you have to deal with the groups that you're ambassadors to as each of you see fit. But, you know, my way is to like, this is going to be amazing, and we're all part of this being amazing, and it's only amazing because we all do it together. That is what makes it amazing. So that people are willing to take the time it needs, 4 hours, you know, to choose the thing and bring in the right object or move it from here to there, because they get invested.
I also think that the interest in the show will be how it grows. That people will come back because it's growing like this, and that it keeps accumulating like that. You know, I think that's what the. I know that it would be very interesting for anybody who at an early would being told that it really has changed in 3 weeks. You know, so they come in again and take a look. And it's possible to keep adding. Just because you added once doesn't mean someone can't come back and take another thing they want to add, or yourselves.
And they should always come with an ambassador.
Yes, we think we're going to leave some paper for we've loosely thought about, I mean, what about the person who just drops in and looks at it and is not part of an ambassador group but would like to add something? You know, what do you do in that instance? Or should we provide for this or not? Or you say, you have to contact one of these 20 people. Here's a list of 20 people.
Or come back on the drop-in day. We talked about having a drop-in day, didn't we?
Yeah, like a Saturday,
Yeah.
Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I'm trying to champion that, because I think that that would be great if we had a drop-in day. And then maybe people who have contributed with an ambassador might want to bring a friend back to see it, and the friend might be jazzed and might want to actually schedule with an ambassador, or might want to do it on a drop-in, I don't know. But, you know, sky's the limit.
Well, I mean, this is, when you're here, this is going to be open, so.
Yeah.
Yes, somebody has to be here Saturday from noon to 5, and,
I mean, then you're going to have the papers that explain, I mean, just, you know, so you don't necessarily have to explain it to everybody. Maybe they can read it, you know, if you want to contribute to this one. Talk to the lady behind the desk.
well, yes, and unfortunately, there's only so many hours in the week that I'm allowed to work, and so if I can get an ambassador to cover some of the Saturday shift, that would be completely awesome. But I'm willing to be the Saturday ambassador, but...
The young woman who is in arts management, who was at our first meeting. I thought she was thinking maybe that would be a good role for her, since she doesn't have people.
She emailed me to say that she took a job.
Oh.
She would not be available.
Okay.
I mean, Kelly and Lisa now, you know, have been videoing the camera up and doing all kinds of Facebook and blogging, and, you know, I am, within 2 days, completely won over, as I know all of you are, by Columbus and what's here, and, you know, the mission of you know, this center. And, you know, I think this is going to go viral, you know, on the internet. You know what I mean? When it gets out there, it's, you know. So it's, I think for all the people you bring in, you know, they'll be part of, you know, sort of being proud of where they are and letting people know. Because, you know, people don't necessarily know about Columbus, but they should, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, so what's the logistics for the next day and such?
Let's see. The things that need to be decided upon is if, with the idea of fastening stuff, that I think we need the equipment we probably need is a hot glue gun, standard glue, contact, those contact tabs, or the fasteners that you peel, stick them.
Right, that foam with adhesive on both.
Right. And then mechanical fasteners and the screw gun. That would be the things off the top of my head. If you can think of other things, we should hear about it.
Staple gun.
Staple gun. This box of stuff should be kept in the closet and be made available. Like that. And then scheduling it so that somebody on the Saturday comes in and agrees to see what's not fastened and fastens it. Fascinating.
Yay!
I want to be a fascinator.
Yeah.
That sounds really good.
Can we do anything tomorrow? It's 6 days of the opening?
Pass the word to everybody on your email chain, again, that the opening's tomorrow night. And what's left to do is, if you want to put more elements in, feel free to do so. I'll be arranging lights. We've got the signage almost up, and setting up the studio for the opening at 6 o'clock. The rest of it's me hammering on PR.
But I think the more elements, the better, because it starts to take a critical mass and then explodes from there. And so even if there were people you wanted to bring in later, to start bringing them in, you know, or bring in more things, I think there can't be enough elements.
Really? See, I was afraid we would do too much, and then there
No
would be
way.
enough. Okay.
I think somebody,
that's
Kelly
great.
will tell you if you've gotten too much. I think you're so far from too much.
Well, I know we are now, but I think we have a month and a half to go of bringing people in, so
You
it's a
know,
lot of
I
people.
think you'll
I'm-
see if every shelf is littered with things, it'll be
Okay,
expensive.
okay.
I don't foresee it being a problem.
Can we get you to make some more of these?
Yeah, sure. Ship 'em they're made, I'll ship them now.
We got lots of empty spaces.
So, yeah, I think the idea of, I'm trying to sit here and figure out how this gets a sense of unity, and that might be one way, is if it gets so frantic in these little
Dense.
dents in these little alcoves that it starts to like blend together. I guess I'm looking at things now, I see lots of places where there are elements that
Yeah,
don't
jarring.
they don't unify
They
with
don't
the
unify.
shape.
Yeah.
They're like stuck on there, but there's nothing to focus on the shape of what they're in. And I can imagine somebody coming along with paint and like kind of pulling things together or activating spaces. But I'm trying to figure how this is going to work. I don't know about anybody else, but I'm at a scared point right now. I hear a lot. I hear from you guys are trying to focus. What is this? I hear conflicting information, and I'm thinking, well, it's just part of the process, of kind of formulating how this is going to work, or trying to get a direction so things work together. It's early. It's really the early stages, but I'm, scares the shit out of me.
What is conflicting? Well, that's good.
Yeah.
You don't get somewhere new without
Well,
having some
the idea-
failure and
the idea
not
of-
knowing what's going to happen. But what's
The idea of, well, you're talking about aesthetic decisions, and there's the idea of aesthetic decisions being made that create a sense of harmony and poetry between the elements. And at the same time, there's an interest in not, like honoring everybody's input, and also bringing people in who are totally non-art people, and then everything in between. And then there's the idea of you're the master and this is your creation, and it's like, okay, there's all these, and all that's true, but we want something that works in the end as a unit. And then how do you get there without squishing people's ideas? Or, I guess I can anticipate various endpoints. Like we're at the beginning of something, and some things have started gelling, and there's a structure. But I can imagine a train wreck too. I can imagine things become incredibly dense and fascinating, and I could imagine a train wreck, maybe
I think it's possible. I think that's the nature of the beast. Like I go into, I'll speak from my own experience. The museum says, we're going to give you this space. I go in, and it's a risk. Maybe it's going to fail. People aren't going to like it, or, won't look good, or, you know what I mean? But I've committed, and, they've advertised, and, and so there's, it's like we're watching Wimbledon, it's
But
like
this is more complex. So what I hear you saying is you've done various kinds of cooperative things, but this sounds like it's a little different.
It's a little different, but it's not so different.
All right.
So, I've done things collaboratively and things on my own, but what my instinct from my experience of doing 100 collaborative projects is if people were to focus on just going back to thinking of these as curio cabinets or curio shelves or pedestals, they've gone a little crazy, and making objects to put on to embellish them and let them talk to each other and be dense. that it will succeed. That is my experience. That the form of it in relationship to everything else will hold it together. And that the skill, I mean, you know, you could, like, people could only do like that little plaster piece you brought in. You could have 200 people make little versions of that and put them on all the shelves and it would be great. You know, I mean, there's many ways it could go. Or, you know, but like I'm saying, you know, when I just saw the red on that wooden form, I'm like, well, I don't know, what's that going to be, what's that? But all of a sudden it's in relationship to the bicycle parts, and it's awesome. You know, and it's the silver with the red, it's the, you know, where they appear. And I think that there are, you know, in every sort of installation I've done, I've actually had to edit and pull things away and move them over, you know, because they were too woolly and too, you know, so I think you just, you know, that can happen. But I think there's no way to get the kind of the possibility of how spectacular this can be without being on the edge a little bit and seeing where it's going to go. So, you know, I have faith, and I think all of you as ambassadors can have discussions like every few weeks or whatever you call it, and talk about how you think things are going, and, you know, make decisions. And it's, you know, every situation's different, so, which is what makes it interesting. I mean, for me personally, if I came here and did exactly what I'd already done, it wouldn't be interesting. You know, it's like, it's sort of being on that, you know, the edge of the unknown.
If you think that if you bring in a complete novice to this stuff, and they've somehow been convinced they're going to add to an art piece, and they bring something that they're going to want to add to it, it's a lot to ask them to now think critically about that addition. It's too much too soon. And so
what do we do?
I think what you do is you describe that all of us who add stuff look for the best possible places to locate it, to see if that thing we're going to place is actually the things to think about. Is it showing it off enough? Is it, can you develop, does it help if it's next to something else? Or because as this accumulates, nothing will be in isolation. So where do you, oops, what was that then?
The YuYu fell.
Tape on the, you know. And then once they make the decision, you kind of let that decision stand. You don't go in and go, you know, I really don't think you did the right thing. You can't do that with the novice. You got to let them make their move and just watch what happens. And if enough accretion does occur, whatever decision that was fitfully got to, and oh my God, it's like by the third week, there's 20 more objects around you. The context you thought you entered isn't the context you ended up with. So, in some sense, it's like saying it doesn't matter. You know, if it collects, and that's really the success of it would be if enough stuff sticks.
Exactly, and you know, as Kelly was talking, you know, it reminds me. Absolutely every time I've done a large-scale collaborative project, there's an aha moment in the end where people understand why we had this conversation and why all this happened, and it almost never happens till the end. You know, if it's a school and I work with all the teachers and I do a workshop with the teachers and then we work with every classroom, even the teachers, it doesn't matter till the end. You know, because but in the end it's like clear as a bell. You know, and even for the novices who, you know, have no critical thinking, they're just developing the critical thinking skills or applied to art or whatever. In the end, there's this aha moment of, oh, that's how all this works together, and that's interesting. I know it from experience, but you have to go through it.
And because we're going to focus on these curiosity cabinets, you see the size. So the scale of what someone's adding is appropriate for that, or if they get a top shelf, of course, they can go big. So that's the way when you go to your group, it's saying you're looking for things you can carry in your hand. You know, I'm not looking for a plow or wagon wheel. You know.
Right.
So I can see wagon wheel different.
Does anybody have a sense of how many people we should bring at a time, or what would be the maximum? Or, you know, maybe there might be a minimum. I don't know. I guess some people might want to come along, but
I think it's gonna be hard in a lot of cases getting groups together, you know, unless they're already a pre-formed group. You know, it's like getting everybody, it's hard to get people together to play music.
right.
So how do you get that?
Yeah.
Bigger the group, the harder it is going to be to get them together. I'm wondering, like, I'm thinking about a group of friends and maybe saying it'd be good to, I hate to do it, have them do it by themselves, but maybe talk to them, send them down to look at this, what's here, and then arrange a time, and then have them go back and think about something, how something would, they think would fit, and then bring them back together at another time. I don't, like Kelly was saying, there's probably any number of ways to get groups together, or to work with the groups. I'm not saying I was.
Because it's like around numbers, I thought if everyone could touch 10 people to come in, that would be something. And we have almost 200 contributors. Let's make a rule here. I have an idea. We can vote on this. It's our responsibility to make these cabins full. So if we can't get the people in, we have to do the work. Make them fill. That's the kind of rule. And we all agree, we're committed to filling this thing up and transforming these objects. Okay.
I like that. But I mean, I think you'll have to be cheerleaders, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just like, and that's the way, I mean, I was briefly an advisor for a presidential committee on the arts and humanities when Clinton was in office. And they did a survey of arts organizations all around America. And the one thing I remember that they discovered was it was always individually driven. There was always an individual with a passion who kind of, their excitement pulled it through. And every collaborative project I've ever done, there's a principal, there's a teacher, there's a parent, there's somebody who just loves this notion. They raise the money, they rally the troops, they get it to happen. And so it's great because there's 20, you know, ambassadors who are kind of doing that. But you know, you have to just come on. It's like you'll enjoy it. It's good. It's, you know, give back to the community, put yourself out, and you know, there is a little of that has to happen sometimes. Not always. Some people are like can't wait to do it, but you know, it's both.
I think one of the biggest things to get people who are just not that familiar with art, or they don't go to museums, they don't go to galleries, they feel very uncomfortable when confronted by contemporary art because they feel like they don't understand it. And I always have this response for them ready, which is, do you like music? And they say, yeah. So what kind of music do you like? They say this or that. Did you ever listen to music without lyrics? Or any classical music or any kind of music? Yeah. And you like it? Yeah. Do you know why? It just feels good. So you just say, that's what this is. There's not a lot to understand. There is, but on a very basic initial level, the entrance is you're having an emotional response to this experience, and just let it happen. Don't overthink it. No, there's no test. You know, there's no grade. You can't fail. All you can do is not have an experience by not coming in. And that usually, like, your shoulders relax. You know, I've been walking people into my studio for 20 years, and so has Mark. And, you know, lots of different types of people who meet me and say, I know nothing about art. Can I come over to your studio? You mind if I come over? I know nothing about art. And I say, that's okay. I know nothing about brain surgery. You know? Anyway, so it's like that. So you have to talk to your friends and your guests and just get their shoulders to relax. These things don't bite.
Bravo.
Okay, guys. So we're going to walk away personally responsible for filling these things. Group by group. Okay. By
Actually, have to
September,
steal things?
by September, Friday the 13th.
Well, I'll be out of town. so
Start taking
that's
it.
not that problem.
Ready to do that.
When